Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something that might sound a little scary at first, late rent payments. Recently, there's been a chart making the rounds that shows more and more tenants are falling behind on their rent. At first glance, that might look like a warning sign that the housing market or even the economy could be in big trouble. But don't panic just yet. I want to break this all down for you in simple terms. Why this is happening, what's really going on behind the scenes, and most importantly, what it means for you. And stick around, because some of the numbers I'm about to share might really surprise you. So, here's the deal. The chart that's going around shows late rental payments are rising. Naturally, people start to panic. Tenants worry about losing their homes. Landlords worry about not getting paid. Investors worry the entire housing market might crash. And let's be real, the average person in America right now isn't in the best financial spot. About 1 in 3 Americans has no emergency savings at all, and the median savings is only about $500. That means if someone suddenly loses their job, rent might not get paid on time. Sounds pretty bad, right? But here's the thing, when you only look at the chart without context, it paints a darker picture than reality. What most people don't know is that late rent payments are actually really common, even in good times. In fact, almost 1 out of every 5 tenants usually doesn't pay their rent in full and on time. Yes, even in healthy markets, nearly 20% are late. So if you see a chart saying late rent payments are up, you have to dig deeper. Because the truth is, late payments don't always mean tenants can't pay. Sometimes they just pay part of it late. Here's how it works. For rent to be considered paid on time, it has to be paid in full by the due date. But in reality, a lot of tenants pay part of the rent at first, catch up by the end of the month, or sometimes pay a few weeks late because of paycheck timing. For example, during the pandemic, only about 80% of tenants paid their rent on time. By 2023, that number had risen to 88%. Before the pandemic, in 2019, the number was around 83%. So at any given time, somewhere between 12 and 20% of tenants are late. But here's the good news. By the end of the month, over 90% usually catch up and get their rent paid. Now, here's where things start to change. Since May of 2025, the percentage of tenants falling behind has grown from 8.4% to 11.7%. That means more people are relying on mid-month paychecks to finally catch up. On top of that, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau released some data about late fees. Back in 2021, about 15% of tenants had a late fee. That rose to 23% in 2023, but then dropped down again to 14% by late 2024. So yes, fewer people are getting late fees now. But the tenants who are behind are owing a lot more money in back rent than before. In other words, the people who are struggling harder. Now, before we assume the sky is falling, there's an important detail hidden in the fine print of that chart. The data only counts tenants who eventually do pay their rent. If someone hasn't paid anything for more than 60 days, they aren't even included in the chart. That means the chart makes things look a little less serious than they might be, because it ignores the people who are really far behind. Also, rent amounts below $500 or above $10,000 are excluded. That cuts out very low-income housing and very high-end luxury housing. And one last thing, the data is averaged over 3 months. That smooths out big spikes, but it also hides months that might have been much worse. So while the chart isn't lying, it's definitely not telling the whole story. Another thing most people don't realize, not all landlords are the same. Big corporate landlords who own hundreds of apartments usually have stricter rules and better systems to collect rent. But mom and pop landlords, regular people who own just a few rental units, have the lowest rent collection rates. Why? They're often less experienced. They may not enforce strict rules. Their tenants often have lower incomes and are more likely to pay late. From my own experience, mom and pop landlords are usually more understanding and willing to work with tenants. They might allow partial payments or give people more time, but that flexibility can also lead to more late payments. And here's the kicker. Small landlords often don't have big reserves of cash. If their tenant pays late, it directly affects their ability to pay the mortgage, property taxes, or insurance. So late rent hits them way harder than it does a giant corporation. So what does this all mean, boss? In 2025, yet late rental payments are higher than the historical average, but the increase is only 1 or 2%. That's not catastrophic. Still, it does show the strain people are under. Think about it. Nearly half of renters now spend more than 1/3 of their income on housing. That leaves very little money for other expenses. Auto loan delinquencies, especially among subprime borrowers, are rising. Credit scores just had their biggest one-year drop since the Great Recession. So even though late rent isn't exploding, it's a sign of bigger financial pressure. Rising housing costs, higher interest rates, and increasing debt all squeeze people's wallets. So what should you do if you're in this situation? For landlords, try to work things out with your tenants whenever possible. Evictions are expensive, stressful, and should only be a last resort. Most tenants are honest people who want to pay but may just need more time. For tenants, if you can't pay your rent, communicate with your landlord. Remember, landlords have bills too, and they're often more flexible if you're upfront about your situation. Don't just skip the payment and hope for the best. That almost always makes things worse. If your landlord is a big management company, it might be harder because they usually stick to strict rules. But with mom and pop landlords, being honest and working together can often lead to a fair solution. So here's my bottom line. Yes, late rent payments are ticking up in 2025, but the numbers aren't at crisis levels. Back in 2019, about 10% of tenants didn't pay rent on time, and that was considered normal. Today, it's just a little higher. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world either. What it does show is that people are under more financial stress than before, and that's something we should all keep an eye on. So if you want me to keep updating you with the latest data and breaking it down in simple terms, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.